Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards, welcoming you to InFocus, a weekly program where we take a closer look at what's happening within and across the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, your government. On today's program, we are diving into a major event that puts our islands at the center of global sustainability conversations. From May 27th to 29th, the St. Kitts and Nevis will co-host the Global Sustainable Island Summit, or GSIS, an international gathering that brings together island leaders, innovators, and policymakers to tackle some of the biggest challenges facing island nations today. Now, the very first GSIS took place just last year on Prince Edward Island in Canada. So what inspired our government to step up and co-host this year's summit? What does it mean for us, and what can we expect? Joining us today to discuss these issues are the Honorable Dr. Joyelle Clarke, Minister responsible for Sustainable Development, Environment and Climate Action, and Aquanjé Robinsonv, Executive Research Officer, Climate Advocate, Youth Leader, and Mr. Earth. What exactly does this mean? Well, I certainly will find out. Stay with us for InFocus, your government, your business. Thanks for staying with us, and allow me now to welcome back to InFocus Minister, the Honorable Dr. Joyelle Clarke. Minister, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ian.
And a newcomer. You brought someone new with you this time around.
Not new to press, but new to the show, yes.
Yes, of course, Mr. Robinsonv. And he's quite a young person, a young leader in his own right. He's a CARICOM Youth Ambassador. I know he works with your ministry. We want to start, Minister, a bit with Aquanjé because, of course, as I mentioned in the opening, we're going to talk a bit about GSIS. But just to give the public a sense of who Mr. Robinsonv is, of course, you're a 25 Most Remarkable Teen recipient last year. Tell us first about your role at the ministry. What do you do?
Well, as you mentioned, I serve as the Executive Research Officer, but to be more granular, I act as the Permanent Secretary's personal assistant. So anything the Permanent Secretary is responsible for, I provide direct support, particularly in her functioning as the Global Environment Facility operational focal point, shaping the ministry's environmental policy, and just in the administration of government responsibility.
And when did you join the team?
I joined in August 2024.
Now, Minister, I mentioned that Mr. Robinsonv, of course, would have received the 25 Remarkable Teen Award last year, and it was for his work in the environmental area. I know it's something that you are inspired by. You presented the award to him.
Yes. Yes. Should I say anything? I think I was glowing and gleaming and gloating on that day, because if it's one thing that I am a super advocate for, it's young persons, young people in environmental spaces and young people in leadership spaces. And Mr. Robinsonv has brought the two together as a CARICOM Youth Ambassador, as a remarkable teen, and of course a passion for the environment and a budding passion for the marine environment space. And this only happens when young persons are given the opportunity to be put right in the middle of ministries and how they function, be part of conferences, participate and learn, and therein the inspiration to be part of our global environmental advocates begins.
Right. Okay, and Mr. Robinson, your LinkedIn profile, I had a look at it, and it mentioned that you were listed as Mr. Earth, and also it says that you were born of the ocean. What do these mean?
Well, Mr. Earth, I was encouraged by a colleague and a friend to coin myself as something catchy that connects to my passion and what I do in the environment. Similarly, another Clarke Youth Ambassador colleague from the Bahamas refers to herself as Miss Sustainability. So I wondered, what can I refer to myself as? And Mr. Earth was what I came up with. Another option was Captain Planet, but I feel like
I think that's already taken.
I feel like Mr. Earth has a more professional connotation.
Yes, and I'm sure the name Captain Planet is trademarked, so you'll probably have some problems there as well too.
Right.
I'm born of the ocean.
Well, as Dr. Clarke mentioned, aside from me being a passionate environmentalist, specifically, I focus on the marine environment. So I'm an environmentalist generally, but specifically I am very big on anything about the ocean. So, and my name is Aquanjé, Aqua, get it? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, a lot of the work I do involves the marine space. So, yeah.
So it's almost like your mother was telegraphing your future.
Honestly, I strongly believe that.
Okay. So, Minister, as we mentioned, of course, we're here to discuss GSIS, which is the Global Sustainable Island Summit. It's being held from May 27th to 29th. And there are a few pre-activities before that, and we want to get in it as well. So the pre-activities actually begin on the 25th. So it's actually 5 days from the 25th to the 30th of activities here in St. Kitts and Nevis. But we want to first start off with this GSIS itself. Now, what exactly, for those who may not be aware, is GSIS?
So this is the Global Sustainable Islands Summit. We're hosting GSIS 3. The first one was actually in Madeira, Spain, but it had a different title. I think it was called the Blue Economy and Sustainable, I'll get it, the Blue Economy and Sustainable Islands Forum, but it has since morphed into Global Sustainable Islands Summit, which of course the first of its kind was held in Prince Edward Island, and we're hosting GSIS 3. So it really is an excellent opportunity for island nations globally, and this is Pacific, EU, Africa, and the Caribbean, to convene and to talk, to discuss, to deliberate on key issues that island nations face. And this has everything to do with energy, resilience, sustainability, climate finance, and of course networking is important because sharing ideas, knowledge sharing opportunity. So that's GSIS 3 SKN in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so what motivated the government of St. Kitts and Nevis to host this year's summit?
Sometimes the best motivation comes from being immersed in an experience, and for us, the Prime Minister, having led the delegation to GSIS 2 at Prince Edward Island, was convinced immediately of the need to bring island nations to St. Kitts and Nevis. We have said for years that we are the smallest independent nation in the Western Hemisphere. In 2022, the Prime Minister presented to the world at the UN General Assembly our very ambitious agenda on sustainability and transition. And because we have achieved quite a few milestones towards this transition agenda, it felt natural that we would invite the world to St. Kitts and Nevis, the smallest independent nation in the Western Hemisphere, a coastal island nation, a nation that faces all of the challenges of climate change, of climate injustices, of climate finance access. Come to St. Kitts and let's have a conversation about charting a better course for our nations.
Mm-hmm. And so the discussions in cabinet, was it a difficult sell to say, okay, we're going to bring this conference here?
It's never a difficult sell, but I would say the entire cabinet fully supports the Sustainable Island State Agenda, from tourism to education for sustainable development, climate smart housing, climate and health, and smart hospitals. I mean, I could go on and on and on, and you're seeing that the sustainability agenda, it permeates every sector that ministers lead. So to say to them that we're bringing 200 plus persons to St. Kitts and Nevis, and not just any group of persons, you're talking technocrats, head of regional agencies, ministers, finance experts, financing bodies. We're bringing them to St. Kitts to have a conversation. Immediately there's going to be support for it, but let's say, if I could be more granular, the Ministry of Tourism, 200 plus persons, they're in hotels, they're taking taxis, they're buying flights, they're coming to St. Kitts, has potential for repeat visitors. And when I presented in Parliament, I think it was last year's budget, that we're taking conference tourism very seriously. We've done so with GCF. We've been here. We brought 200 plus persons here for GCF. We brought another 160 plus persons for the SKNIS agreement, and now we're doing 200 plus island nations to St. Kitts, and of course there are more events for the rest of the year. So Cabinet was fully on board. Of course, it meant serious coordination and collaboration, and we have that from all the respective ministries.
Now, the conference is co-hosted by Island Innovation. And what do we know about Island Innovation?
So Island Innovation has spent the last couple of years really being that conduit for islands to convene and converse. And I know the government of St. Kitts and Nevis started its collaboration with, this administration started its collaboration with Island Innovation in 2022 with a post-COVID convening. And I think a foreign minister, prime minister, myself, and Island Innovation has a very, very strategic model which allows persons to come together to convene, to discuss critical issues facing island nations. But apart from that, their model also allows for youth involvement and participation, capacity strengthening, knowledge sharing. They are present at almost every critical conference globally, and that says a lot because their reach is global, their penetration is global, and it allows them to be central to a lot of critical conversations, and that's what they do.
Mr. Robinson, talk to us a bit about the involvement of the youth at these high-level talks.
Well, I think Dr. Clarke is a perfect example of an individual that enables that engagement. Similarly, when I first started working at the ministry, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference, COP29, was happening in Baku, Azerbaijan. And according to my interests, I was given the opportunity to serve as the National Youth Delegate at that conference, which was a grand opportunity, honestly. And I was able to advocate not just as an individual, but alongside Dr. Clarke, because there was this one particular address that she was making at the Global Center for Climate Mobility. And her address was her address, but she carved out 1 minute in her address to give me a chance to address the other leaders there. So I think youth engagement at these critical fora is very important, because young people matter, our voices matter, and we aren't just the leaders of tomorrow, but we should have a chance to manage the future that we are to inherit now.
A question that some persons may ask is, do young people really care about sustainability?
Well, it depends. There are persons like myself who are die-hard, passionate people about it, but there are other persons who are not so passionate, simply because it's just not their passion. And everything can't be for everyone, but sustainability should be for everyone, and that's our number one MO. So even though majority of persons aren't interested, that's a mission that I have taken up upon myself, and I think that's a mission that other persons have taken up, like my regional colleagues, CARICOM Youth Ambassadors, and other persons that are very interested in the youth leadership space, particularly in climate action and environmental sustainability.
Because, of course, Minister, climate change threatens the entire region.
Exactly, which is why it should be for everyone, because it affects all of us. Climate change leaves no one behind. Similarly, we should leave no one behind.
If I may add to that question, not because I qualify as a youth, I'm not, but I'd like to say also that the increasing global youth advocacy for environmental matters is clear. And in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have champions in almost every NGO, every school, and persons who are incredibly passionate, convinced, convicted that what they're doing now, as Aquanjé mentioned, that if young people are to show increased passion and willingness to stand up for the environment, then as adults, we have to do things like this. So thank you so much for having Aquanjé on the show. Give them spaces to talk, to be part of the conversation, and to manage what's happening now, and not necessarily in a tokenistic way, but that they're resourced, that they are part of our delegation, which has happened since we took office in 2022. Regardless of what people say about the size of our delegation, it always has a good component of young persons, male and female, and they do everything from negotiating to participating in sessions and leading their own conversations. When we leave, somebody has to take up the baton, and they're not going to do it naturally if we don't create the opportunity for them to do so. So in our ministry, we're very young, but it's the youth energy that we need to really push this agenda, and I'm so happy that every time I take up a speech, I know Aquanjé was part of the email thread and part of the research. Every time I read a document that was 300 pages and I'm reading 5 pages, I know he was burning the midnight oil to get that. And every time they engage, they're learning, they're becoming advocates.
Right. Okay. Now, Minister, you mentioned, of course, the COP, and every year there are various international conferences and meetings on climate and sustainability. Of course, most persons are familiar with the Conference of Parties, which would be COP. There's also the International Conference on Sustainable Island Developing States, SIDS, is also a conference as well too. What makes GSIS, the Global Sustainability Island Summit, so different?
Right, so in this case, whereas COP and SIDS for Small Island Developing States, and COP is for everyone, Global Sustainable Island Summit is for island nations and partners who work closely with island nations. And it's also a recognition that island nations have very unique threats that need to be addressed. Because we're coastal nations, it means that sea level rise is going to affect us the end. You know, for St. Kitts and Nevis, most, if not all of our infrastructure is coastal, which means not only our homes, our roads, our telecommunications are very vulnerable to sea level rise or to the impact of storm surges. Additionally, we're small. We import more than we export, and our economies are tied to exogenous factors. Whatever happens globally in the economy affects how many people would come to St. Kitts and how they would spend. If there's a hurricane, the boats will go the ships will go somewhere else. So it just goes on and on and on in terms of the unique experiences of islands. And then, of course, we have the unfortunate unique experience, which is the majority of climate finance doesn't come our way. It doesn't come to SIDS, it doesn't come to island nations. And to amplify our voices, instead of St. Kitts and Nevis going out and saying, hey, give us more money, we do it as OECS, or we do it as CARICOM, or we do it as SIDS. And we're saying, acknowledge, recognize, and keep the special circumstances of SIDS, and then we're saying, come, focus also on island nations and do it here in one of the smallest nations with the greatest ambition.
Right.
Yeah.
And you touched on it earlier in terms of mentioning some of the, not necessarily by name, but the innovators and the industry leaders who are going to participate in this. And I took a look at the site for GSIS itself, and it was very impressive. I saw premiers and governors, and these are persons who are expected to speak, and we have a graphic that our producer can put on screen now. It includes premiers, governors of within overseas territories here in the Caribbean, ministers from across the region, and of course the CARICOM, and it has and forgive me if I mispronounce the name, Mukta Babayev, who's the COP29 president and minister for ecology and natural resources in the government of Azerbaijan. Of course, as you mentioned, there was that forum there last year. Rebecca Fabrizi, UK's envoy for UK Small Island Developing States. There's Dr. Jamila Ward, the regional director of the Commonwealth Caribbean Department for Business and Trade, British High Commission. Dr. Mohammed Rafiq Nagdi, the executive director of the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. Of course, most persons know that as SKNIS. There's also Paloma Zapata, who is the CEO of Sustainable Travel International, and there are a host of others, Minister. Talk to us about having these high-profile persons coming to St. Kitts and Nevis to make presentations, to engage persons from around the region, making the case for small and developing states.
So excited. These are persons who we meet when we go overseas, and to have all of these persons convene in St. Kitts and Nevis is so, like, what's the young word for that? Give me the youthful expression for that. I don't know. It's amazing. And it also speaks volumes. Oh, I just got a note, sorry, that was my phone ringing, that Saudi has also confirmed. So we have the UAE confirming that they're going to be here. And as I said, it's not just for island nations, but for persons who work with island nations and development partners. But that all of these persons are coming to convene in Little St. Kitts for 5 full days on thematic issues that are critical to us says a lot, not only about our agenda. It says a lot about the global reach of St. Kitts and Nevis from the voice of our Prime Minister, who has made it clear to the world, I think from COP28 in Dubai, when he shared the stage with the likes of Bill Gates and VP Harris, that we're not looking for handouts, we are looking for partnership. Fast forward 2 years, and here we are, a global partnership with many actors.
And if I may add, I feel as though these people are persons of high influence and high power in the decision-making bodies that cause the changes that we aspire to happen. So if these influential people have a chance to listen to us island nations and small island developing states up close, I think it offers a grand opportunity for them to implement those changes at the seats at the tables they sit at.
And being here, Minister, of course, that exposes them to the actual underground happenings. They can go to Koi. I know the Prime Minister often refers to Koi Resort, speaking about the impact of climate change, and in fact in St. Kitts and Nevis, it was a beach resort. It no longer has a beach.
Correct.
You know, being here, you can actually see what's being done. You can see the changes. You can see how St. Kitts and Nevis, as the smallest independent country in the Western Hemisphere, is doing its part to tackle climate change.
Correct. Correct. Now, when we had the Green Climate Fund here, and the executive director, Duartes, was here, the Minister Maynard and Premier hosted her in Nevis to have a look at the geothermal site. That conversation led to an additional to acknowledgement that there can be additional commitments to our geothermal project, which then led to Minister Maynard hosting a group of, I think, 30 partners in the region, CARICOM, OECS, Caribbean Development Fund, CAF, everyone sat in a room with GCF, with our minister, and confirmed that there is a need for collaboration on energy for OECS regions that have geothermal resources, and to further collaborate based on what Prime Minister Motley, who did come to St. Kitts for that meeting, who said we need to work on logistics, we need to work on travel, and we need to work on energy as a region. And given the global the current global political affairs, it's clear why we have to really unify our bonds as OECS and CARICOM and bring persons to the region. So anticipate now 200 global partners coming to talk about geothermal energy resources with Minister, with Premier, and with other regional partners. I mean, the potential is just exponential.
Right. Okay, and Mr. Robinson, of course, now, as you mentioned, it provides a showcase to the world, and of course, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, the federal government, plans to use it as a platform to help to familiarize persons more, because of course the case has been made with the Sustainable Island State agenda. Tell us, Mr. Robinson, as you are someone who is young and someone who is helping to plan this meeting, how this objective will be realized. And of course, Minister, we'd want to hear from you as well.
Could you repeat?
It's showcasing the Sustainable Island State agenda here in St. Kitts and Nevis on such a platform where global leaders. How will that be done during the summit?
Oh, Okay, well, the Sustainable Island State Agenda is sustainability. Sustainability is a general principle, but CISA is just our local flavor to what sustainability is. And CISA is how we plan as a federation to travel into the future of sustainability. And at GSIS, it will be, the principles of sustainability will be factored into the various sessions. When we talk about the nexuses between food security and water security, when we talk about circular economy principles and energy transition. And the CISA will be launched at the St. Kitts Eco Park. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Why not? Milestone 3. I'll say a little bit more about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it will be officially launched to the public and all of its 7 pillars and what these 7 pillars truly mean in the context of sustainability.
Right, so yes, so we have had a series, I think I explained this the last time I was there, that we're launching Milestone 3, which is a portfolio of our flagship projects of each pillar, what they mean, and how the general community could engage with the ministry to advance the Sustainable Island State Agenda. Sustainability for us is going to be highlighted at Eco Park. I mean, where else better to be than an ecotourism, agrotourism hotspot, which is a destination in and of itself. And there we're going to be partnering very closely with Caribbean's Climate Smart Accelerator.
Yes.
It's going to be doing a demonstration project on hydroponics, right? And we're also going to be partnering with the Republic of China, Taiwan, who has been our greatest partner in sustainability and our own transition with the circular economy. And of course, if you're at Eco Park, you're going to have everything local, all of our artisans, craft vendors, and a full immersive experience into sustainability. And that's our sustainability spotlight. Added to what Robinson said, the thematic focus for the GSIS, the main plenary, is around our 7 pillars: water security, food security, sustainable industries, energy security being number 1, circular economy, and of course health and social protection and sustainable settlements. And all of the speakers who are coming will be speaking around this. So this gives the Sustainable Island State Agenda even greater focus and amplification in terms of our messaging. And of course the media is the focus for our sustainability spotlight. Without the media, we cannot advance our message, and you have to translate for the general public what it means and why it's important. And that's why Milestone 3 is a big launch, which is really about our media partnership.
Let me just give a plug for the Ministry of Tourism. Last week at the press conference, Minister responsible for tourism, the Honorable Marsha Henderson, noted that today, Wednesday the 7th, is supposed to be an open day somewhat down at Eco Park. And she invited the public to come. A lot of work has been done to transform the area, and so certainly would like to encourage persons within the sound of my voice, if you're listening to this on Wednesday or watching that, they can travel down there. And I'm sure it's going to be open as well. It's going
to be great.
It's going to be open. So it's not just, if you don't go today, you're going to miss it. There are, of course, opportunities for persons to go during the regular opening hours of the facility there. All right, Minister. So as mentioned, of course, there are some side events, more or less, that are pre-events, I should say, that's going to take place before the main plenary, and we're going to talk about that. But we're going to take our first and final break. I think the conversation allows not to have too many interruptions in between then. So stay right there, Minister, Mr. Robinson, and viewers and listeners. We'll be right back with more In Focus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info. If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info. If you haven't done it as yet, Please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info. If you haven't done...
Welcome back to InFocus. We continue our discussion about the Global Sustainability Island Summit, which is taking place here in St. Kitts and Nevis from May 25th to the 30th. And we are having our discussion with the minister responsible for climate action, environment, and constituency empowerment, and several other areas, the Honorable Dr. Joyelle Clarke, and she's joined by a young member of staff, Mr. Aquanjé Robinsonv, who is a CARICOM Youth Ambassador and also a climate advocate. Now, Minister, we spoke about the pre-events that were going to take place during GSIS, and we want to start, Mr. Robinson. I believe this is an area that you'll be very interested in with the Island Youth Forum. What is the Island Youth Forum? And that's supposed to be scheduled from May 25 to 26. There's a graphic that, again, we can put on screen so that persons can get a sense of that.
So, in the same vein as the Global Sustainable Island Summit, to precede that main summit, we have the Island Youth Forum, and it simply features young people, young leaders like myself, but not only like myself, but just young people in general, because we don't want to isolate it to simply people who are interested in the topic, but we want to create interested persons. So it unites young leaders, young people from ages 15 to 35 from all around the world. We are hosting 100 local youth, and the other youth are being hosted from the regional and international landscapes. And the Island Youth Forum features the principles of sustainability in different ways. When we speak to plenary style sessions, activity-based workshops, and of course, activism.
And what inspired the creation of this Island Youth Forum to have it included in this year's summit?
Well, I think the leaders of now are realizing or are recognizing the value, the immense value that young people bring to the table in the decisions that they are making now. And I think the Island Youth Forum is an opportunity for the work that we are doing as young leaders around the world to showcase what we truly want these leaders to know. We want to share our voices, share our concerns, and really let our concerns be heard. So I think the Island Youth Forum is an opportunity for young people to learn from each other and also broadcast what the youth voice is to the rest of the world.
I should also say that Aquanjé and his team, I think you should say it when I'm finished, but the UNFCCC is also sponsoring about 5 delegates to be part of it, of the Island Youth Forum here in St. Kitts and Nevis. But when that call went out, over 300 plus persons applied, and of course we had to only choose 5. But then there are other regional partners who are sponsoring participation of young persons.
Yes.
And the ministry is also sponsoring the participation of our young persons. And what I really love about this forum is that we're not having it all in a conference center. Like you're literally on site. You literally have an opportunity to engage, to talk in a Caribbean setting. But to your question on what inspired it, the Island Innovation team did bring to us the idea of having that Island Youth conversation, and it's because they have been working for many years on bringing young persons together, having them part of a full 6-month-long capacity training opportunities, which then catapults into participation at COP and the youth forum, the youth sessions at COP. So they have been doing the work behind getting even this Island Youth Forum here. And of course, it's in St. Kitts. It's going to be 2 days, 200 plus young persons we are anticipating, and you should say the team that's coordinating with our ministry to do this so that we
so we have a group of budding young persons that are leading the charge in the organization and coordination of the Island Youth Forum behind the scenes. So it's not like other events where adults take the charge. We as young people have the chance to incorporate our ideas into the functioning of this undertaking.
You mentioned earlier that the summit, the Island Youth Forum, is going to help the young persons to express themselves and to let the adults and the global leaders know what is it they want them to know about climate change and sustainability issues. Give us a sense of what do you think, or what can you expect to be communicated to these leaders? And I appreciate, of course, that every island, although there's some similarities with Somaliland, everyone has their own uniqueness.
Correct.
And so I don't expect you to speak for the entire population, youth population of planet Earth, Mr. Earth. But just give us a sense of what your expectations are.
Well, I feel like, most importantly, climate mobility is a very grave issue that island folk face around the world. Although we as people of St. Kitts and Nevis are very fortunate, others from around the world don't share the same privileges as we do. People are literally losing their lives, losing their families, livelihoods are being lost, and economies are being destroyed, ecosystems are collapsing. So that in itself is a very big issue that I anticipate to be communicated. Another issue that we face as young people that I also anticipate to be communicated is our involvement in decision making. Beside tokenism, we want to see our voices actually be factored into the change that is being made. A lot of these fora tend to feature us as young people, but we are simply symbols, and just to say that the youth are involved. That's another issue that I think other young people, my counterparts, will communicate. And we want access to education. We want to become professionals that are going to lead the charge, lead the future. So we want better access to education, cheaper education, and better circumstances in that regard.
What do you say to some young persons who may say that those who are selected are from a specific pool, that there is some sort of affiliation that would influence their selection over another young person?
Selected to attend the youth forum?
Whether it is to attend a conference, whether it is to sit on a board, whether it is to participate in the decision-making process.
Well, I think it's a real issue that exists depending on the context, but I guess it's something that's peculiar to who is in charge. Although they are genuinely interested persons that may not be chosen over persons that may be chosen for a particular reason, whether it be politics, whether it be who is more known. So I think it's a real issue depending on this situation, but in other areas I think chosen ones are genuinely chosen. And although it's difficult to choose someone, like any other decision-making process, you just have to bite the bullet and choose.
Minister, can you talk to us a bit about the model that the government uses?
This government is clear in terms of access, giving youth the opportunity to be part of these conversations. And we have made our intentions very clear. We go St. Kitts and we go Nevis. So that's part of the fair distribution of access that we can provide. Additionally, we take recommendations from the Ministry of Youth. We look at your previous involvement, your current involvement, your NGO work, what your profile is, and we don't repeat per se the opportunities. When you prove yourself to have found your passion, let's say with Aquanjé, with oceans, you are then dedicated towards a particular thematic area. So for SIDS 4, I think we had Tchaikovsky York, who went to Antigua with us. I can't recall the names from the various COPs, but they were all different young persons who came with recommendations from their ministries or their NGOs. And where possible, we have our internship program where we invite recent graduates or CFBC graduates or persons who on summer break from universities to come and work with us, and from there we see what their interest is, and we invite them to partner. We understand the challenges of where in small political climates persons may think only a certain grouping would be selected. I am happy to say that that is not the case with me, having had my own experiences, unfortunate experiences with you can't advance because of a particular color. I made it very, very clear, not only to the ministry but to the cabinet, that young persons, regardless of color, creed, or class, once you are qualified and once you have the passion and you're driven, we are going to afford you the opportunity. And that's why we are very open with our process. We are very open with who sits on our panels, who gets the exposure, who gets the experience. It's not a process that prevents anyone. You just have to, your CV has to speak for you, your activism has to speak for you, and your partners have to speak for you. Even your social media profile has to speak for you. And I have a number of students who, I always have to use this opportunity to say, from the students for the 7 years that I was at Keon High School, the environmental program that we've had, year after year we have students who come who have either been interns, who have, I think Natalia, why am I forgetting her last name? Natalia from that school was part of the environmental club, then part of Girls Care Jamaica program, and then did her own local program, and has for 2 years now had a climate justice camp in her community, which the ministry supports. And she's also going to be coming to the youth forum. So we continue the opportunity, and it's the partnership based on your passion, your interests, and of course, if your social media is showing us that you are an advocate, you're out there cleaning up, that you supporting, that your group is doing this, we're there for you and we want to work with you.
And importantly, Minister, because I would have worked very closely alongside the Department of Youth Empowerment for many, many years, and a big issue is that persons don't make themselves known. They don't register. Their organizations does not register. And if you're working in the wilderness, well, how am I supposed to know that you are there and you are interested as well too? Because registration not just only includes technical support that comes with it and getting your information, but it also means that now I know that there is somebody else that I can call on. There's someone else who can expand the pool and get additional opportunities for. But if you are not known, then certainly it would be highly unlikely that you would be considered, because no one knows what you are doing. Okay, quickly, let's talk a bit about how the outcomes from the Island Youth Forum will feature into the GCIS main conference, the main plenary.
Correct. So, of course, all the sessions will have their outcome document, and we will have our young persons from that Island Youth Forum also be participating in some of our conversations at the main plenary. So the connection continues. They're not just over there just to say check box, they were here, but their outcome, what they believe is important to them as a gathering, is then featured prominently in the main plenary. And of course, we have young persons who are getting the opportunity to sit on panels, not just youth activists, but youth leaders who may be a little bit older, but they're still primarily engaged in youth leadership.
Let's turn our attention now to the Geothermal Energy Forum. That's slated for Nevis on May 26th. It's the same time as well to when the Youth Forum will be taking place. What's the purpose of this forum?
Right. So as I mentioned, when we took persons to the actual site for the GCF visit, it was like, oh my God, real work is happening here. And this is a continuation of our conversations, our access to financing with regional partners. SKNIS and NEVLEC are on board. Island Innovation Team, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, and our regional partners who have a thematic focus on energy. And we're bringing all of these persons here to not only learn from the St. Kitts experience, but share knowledge. So it's a knowledge sharing opportunity. And primarily the conversation is, where do we get the additional investment to advance the geothermal project, not just for St. Kitts and Nevis, but for the rest of the OECS? Because recall, the Minister of Energy has said if we solve energy, we solve water, we solve food. So geothermal isn't just an energy project, it's really an economy-wide project, a transition project. We won't succeed in transition if we don't succeed in transitioning energy resources, the renewable, the right energy mix. And I'm so happy that Minister Maynard, fully competent, is leading that with a fully competent team. And our Prime Minister understands thoroughly the importance of energy, so the global advocacy has been around supporting our energy transition.
Right, and of course, Minister Maynard was here a few weeks ago, and he did compliment you in terms of the work that you were doing as well too, in helping to expand and to explore opportunities as it relates to geothermal, realizing, of course, as you mentioned, that it's the key for many of the social issues, many of the economic issues that St. Kitts and Nevis faces, and it's a helping hand in the sense that if we export energy, then we're also able to help our neighbors as well too. All right, so still on this forum now, how practical is it, Minister, to explore and exploit geothermal in the region, given the associated costs for expertise and equipment? Why make this such a centerpiece issue at the forum, at the summit?
Oh, so I'm not answering the first part of the question because that was for Minister Maynard, and I'll send it to him whenever he comes back. But why not? It's geothermal for us because of our own capacity. I think so let me not go any deeper in the technical language. We have more resources than both our countries need. And why not feature the one resource that has the ability to transition not just energy, but manufacturing and water and, of course, livelihoods. Now, our basic and primary vision for energy is that every person can turn their light on and not have an excessive bill coming at the end. To work in terms of reverse engineering to very low cost energy, meaning every shop can open, small businesses can open, and don't have a ridiculous bill that prevents your business from being successful. You need the energy resource. No, in St. Kitts and Nevis, of course, we're not just pursuing geothermal resources, solar PV, wind, and we have to find a right mix. But for us, because geothermal is perhaps the most efficient approach that we can take, it's long term, it's not a tomorrow solution, we have to start now. And if we're going to get the additional resources for 2030, the conversations have to be happening right now. So every opportunity that we get to feature geothermal, we're going to do it, as we did for GCF and as we're doing here now for Global Sustainable Island Summit. It also shows the political will, which was demonstrated when Prime Minister and Premier, both sides of the government, of the Parliament, supported that resolution that we're working on it. The resources are in Nevis, but this is a federal approach. The next step is really getting a partnership with the rest of the OECS who have geothermal energy resources. I think the SG for OECS said, Dr. Didicus Jules said in our most recent convening of our OECS Ministers of Environment, that we won't get anywhere if each country goes for geothermal alone. It's too cost prohibitive. But together, financing opportunities are better, easier to access, and of course it allows us that connectivity, cross-regional connectivity that we really need, and that's the transformation therefore for our islands.
Now, as you speak about cross-regional connectivity, let's jump to the final aspect that will happen at this one will be post now,
yes,
the plenary summit, and that would be the forum on access to climate finance for sub-national island jurisdictions. Tell us a bit about what this forum is about and the challenges that SIDS, which will be smaller and developing states, face in accessing financing.
Right, so I'm so excited about this particular forum, and I think just recently there was a post on SKN Vibes actually highlighting that the different ministers from the Bonaire, St. Eustatia, Saba, etc. signed on the agreement for the first climate finance. Now the challenges that we're having, even though that these sub-jurisdictions are part of, let's say, recognizing OECS have membership status, CARICOM, there are challenges in accessing climate finance because of the geopolitical realities. Many of them cannot on their own as Anguilla or the BVI go and access finance. There are special projects and facilities that are available for them. But here, bringing them together for this first particular forum, for the first time having all these countries together talking about their own challenges and why it's important to carve out a space for sub-jurisdictions so that they too can become climate resilient. I mean, if you think St. Kitts is small, think of Anguilla. And they have similar challenge. They are an island nation. Of course, they're not an independent island nation, but the challenges still do exist, and it's unique to them as an island nation, not as a codependent of the UK.
Right.
So this conversation is critical. I'm happy that it's happening, and I'm also confident that the outcomes of this conversation will lead into conversations with the OECS, who's also trying to create a framework in which these countries could participate and have similar access. So I look forward to it.
Mr. Robinson, is that something that you imagine will be discussed at the Island Youth Forum? Access to financing for climate justice?
Yes, I do think so, because one of the greatest ways that we as climate advocates and environmental advocates do around the region is grassroots initiatives. So on the larger scale, the bigger climate projects that have a budget of millions of dollars, we at the grassroots level have smaller impact grants, like up to $25,000 US. So it's very important for us as the young people at the Island Youth Forum to advocate for more access for us for those interests.
Minister, you mentioned in terms of the British overseas territories and other related states and countries. I know, for instance, as we spoke about the speakers, that the state senator from Hawaii is going to be a part of this conference as well too. Is there some sort of a special consideration given for territories compared to independent countries?
Right, so as I said, the access profile is completely different, because in the independent territories, St. Kitts and Nevis, we can go ahead to the GCF. You don't have to report to another authority. In their case, they can't access because their profile is tied to who they're codependent on. So that these are challenges that can only be surmounted if the conversations begin. And that's why I'm happy that we have countries like Hawaii joining the conversation. I mean, we invited everyone from the Pacific, so we hope that there will be representation as well, we anticipate. And to be part of the conversation in such a way, and it's not just the islands, sub-jurisdictions that will be here. Right? We're also going to have some of our development partners in the conversation, so they hear firsthand what the experiences are. So looking forward to the context and the variety of the conversation based on countries like Hawaii, countries like some of the Pacific, and of course the Caribbean.
And of course Hawaii is a territory of the United States. So Mr. Robinson, how do you envision the impact of GSIS, the summit here in St. Kitts and Nevis in just a few weeks, as we mentioned, March 25th to the 30th, which will be overall the pre-events and the post-event as well too. How do you envision the impact of GSIS on St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, in chronological order, for the Island Youth Forum, I see the impact for local youth to be a greater sense of gratitude, because as I alluded to earlier, other island nations and their people, they experience more catastrophic effects of climate change from the various impacts. So although St. Kitts and Nevis is not as unfortunate as those mentioned, I think to hear the realities, those stark realities, I think it will cause a behavioral shift among our young people in the actions we take and what we take for granted. Now for GSIS, I think it's a grand opportunity for connection, not only for our enhanced direct access to climate finance, but also to put the Sustainable Island State agenda on the international landscape. And it opens the gateway for investment, for collaboration, and for collective innovation across the region and for the Alliance of Small Island States around the world.
Minister, what actionable outcomes or commitments are you hoping will come out of GSIS 2025, or as you referred to it earlier, GSIS 3?
Okay, so let me get this. Let me gather my thoughts because I know I have a short time. But the fact that even the person who is providing the water for the summit has come on board as a sponsor. We have different financial institutions who are not only coming on as sponsors, but coming on as panel participants. That NGOs across St. Kitts and Nevis have been invited to participate, that every artisan craft vendor who has come on board to partner with GSIS will be showcasing from their teas to their creams to their soaps or whatever they make to an international audience. The taxi association going to be there, moving people back and forth. We're going to be taking upwards of 200 persons on the scenic railway to Eco Park, which means the scenic railway is a high demand option for people who come to St. Kitts and Nevis, and we're giving 200 plus persons from across the world this ride to the Eco Park, and we're highlighting everything that's going on in Nevis with geothermal. The Prime Minister is going to be there to have conversations and have a heads sustainability conversation at Eco Park. The media is going to be there as we launch milestone 3 for CISA. I mean, the outcomes are innumerable, and that's a word, right? I don't know what else to say, but I think what I want to plug here is the ministry didn't do this alone. We had significant partners, and one of our greatest partners has been, outside of energy and the Prime Minister's office, has been the UN mission. And when we push sustainability, and when we say we want to become a sustainable island state, the other parts of government have to function. So for now, I think it's important for me to highlight and to really congratulate the UN mission in New York, the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the launch of their ECOSOC campaign. As you know, ECOSOC is, I think, the second most powerful UN system after the Security Council, and this is the Economic and Social Council, which runs until 2028, and we are campaigning to sit alongside Ecuador, I just want to get it right, Peru and Ecuador, to represent a group of Latin America and the Caribbean. And if it's one thing we face as the Caribbean is whenever there's a grouping of Latin America and the Caribbean, oftentimes the Caribbean isn't there. So if our mission is successful in this bid, it means that we have a powerful seat in a UN agency. We already experienced one of the most powerful seats in the UN Environmental Program, where St. Kitts and Nevis is serving as rapporteur, and we are able to talk about sustainability from the SIDS perspective, but now to have our own mission have that really significant seat. I want to thank them for that campaign. We also have serious support from our mission, our offices in Washington, as we prepare to participate in our UN Oceans Conference with the Department of Marine Resources. The Foreign Affairs has really stepped up 100 times in terms of the geostrategic agenda and the alliances that we need with significant partners who have the resources to help us, who have been able to craft options for support for St. Kitts and Nevis outside of that can't qualify for overseas development aid. So the technical, the sharing, the capacity strengthening, the opportunities for our young persons is such that I really had to congratulate the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the work, because they are continuing our ambition to become a sustainable island state.
And of course, just a bit of a tease for our viewers and listeners. Next week, we actually are supposed to be joined by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, and he's going to speak to us a bit about some of the activities. And Minister, I have to say, there seems to have been a shift, that St. Kitts and Nevis is once again regaining the international prominence that it led so many years ago.
Yes, like 7 years ago.
So we have to leave it right there, Minister. We're out of time for our program. It's Aquanjé Robinson and Minister Clarke. Thank you very much for being with us for this edition of InFocus, and we certainly look forward and wish you all the best for a very successful GSIS Summit.
Thank you.
As it comes on May 25th to the 30th.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
And we'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for being with us for another edition of InFocus. We trust that you will join us next week at the same place, at the same time for another edition. I'm Ian Richards. It's InFocus, your government, your business.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.